How often do you really need to change your workout routine? Once in every 2 weeks, every month, once in 2 months? And when you do change the workout routine, do you completely change it and start off completely fresh? Or do you have a transition from one thing to another? And do you just change some exercises and keep some of the other ones inside? Let's find out questions. Let's find out answers to all of these questions in today's video. So let's get started right away. So the first thing that you need to ask yourself is, what is the reason that you want to change your training plan? There could be many reasons. The first could be that you did a training plan and then you're plateaued. You got some amount of results from it, and after that you're just stuck at one point, and now you need to change it up so that you can continue making progress. And the second reason could be just for fun. You did a training plan and now it's gotten monotonous, it's gotten robotic, it's gotten boring, and you want to change it up just for the fun, to change up the workout plan and then get excited about going to the gym and training all over again. That could be another reason. And the third reason, and this is something that's a little more technical, is if you have a plan in mind, you have a proper periodized plan which requires you to transition from one phase to another phase so that you actually need to reach your training goals. So I'll give you an example. Let's say for 1 month, you focus purely on improving your strength. And from there, you transition into a hypertrophy block wherein you're focusing on building muscle with little more training volume, with lighter weights, but there is a transition, there's a flow to it. There is a transition to the exercise selection from one training plan to another. There is a transition from the training volume, the loads that you're lifting, and all of that. And it all adds up in the big picture when it comes to reaching your training goals. So that could be another reason. So there's another thing you need to consider. If you are an athlete, if you are somebody that has training demands not just in the gym but outside in your sport as well, you have to compete, you have to train for that. In that case, you need to make sure that your training load, your workload is managed so that you don't get into overtraining, you don't get fatigued, and your performance does not drop where it matters. So in that case, you might have to take deloads. Watch this video to understand how to take deloads properly. And in that case, you might have to have a training phase and then you take a deload after every 4 to 6 weeks, and right after that you go into another phase. So that could be another way of going into making a new training plan. Now, talking about a periodized training plan is an ocean of a topic in itself. So I'm not going to delve into the details of it, but I'll give you a very simple example so that you can wrap your mind around how exactly it is done. And this is the professional and right way of doing things. So on your screen, what you see right now is a sample periodization model. This is called a linear periodization model. In this, what we do is we transition from one training phase onto another. In this case, we are starting from a high training volume, which is more number of sets, more number of reps, and starting with lower weights, lower training loads. And from there, we are slowly and gradually transitioning into lifting heavier weights, which is more intense, but for lesser volume or lesser number of sets and reps. So this is the most basic periodization model that most beginners can utilize in order to get really good quality results. And there are more periodization models such as the undulating periodization model, where you can target multiple different training goals at the same time, which is something that I personally use. And that's just the basic that you need to have an idea about. Now, if you are going to be following a periodized model, then your training plan will last anywhere between 1 to 2 months or 4 to 8 weeks. Within this, you're going to get the right adaptation by following the same exercise, the same workout week after week. And once you reach a certain point where you made a good amount of progress, you can move on to your next training goal, which is properly planned and then simply executed. As simple as that. Now, when you go from one training plan to another, do you really need to change all exercises and start completely fresh? No, not necessarily. You can keep the same exercise from one training plan onto the next one if you feel that there is some amount of progress yet to be milked out of it. If you think that, all right, on this exercise, I'm doing barbell bench press, I've done well, but I feel I want to go on to my next training plan, continuing this same exercise so that I can make some more progress. Whereas on another exercise, if you feel, all right, I made good amount of progress on it and I feel I've plateaued, I feel like changing up the exercise variation a little bit, then you can do that. You don't necessarily need to change all the exercises completely. Another mistake that people make going from one training plan to another is having no transition between two phases of training. Do you understand that? When you go from one exercise, you go into another one onto the next training plan, there needs to be a proper flow to it. You can't just jump from one completely different movement pattern, one completely different exercise onto something that is completely unrelated to it. For example, in the first training block, if you did a dumbbell bench press, then you progress on to either push-ups or barbell bench press or a machine chest press. But the point is, it is still the same movement pattern. It is still recruiting and training the same muscles as the previous training block. There might be a difference in the load, in the rep range, in the exercise itself, but there is some transition to it. It is not a completely unrelated or completely random exercise. When you have a plan, it can't be random. There needs to be a flow from one training plan to another. That's another very crucial point that people really mess up quite often. And this last point is very important for particularly beginners. You've seen me say in a lot of my videos, and you might have heard it anywhere else as well, that in order to build muscle, in order to build strength, in order to be athletic, whatever your training goal is, when it comes to lifting weights, you need to focus on the main compound lifts. Your squats, your bench press, your deadlift, your overhead press, your pull-ups. You get the idea, right? It's all of those main compound movements which use multiple joints, multiple muscles at the same time in order to allow you to lift heavy weights. But here's the deal. Most beginners don't have the technique, don't have the movement quality to get right under the barbell. So if you are training, you don't need to start off with the barbell. Start off with basic body weight movements, calisthenic movements. From there, go on to using resistance bands, cables, use a trap bar, use dumbbells, and slowly work your way up to barbell training. Make sure you get the technique right, make sure you get the movement pattern right before you start loading heavy. It's as simple as that. When it comes to training plans, this is what I do with most of my clients who start off as beginners. You start them off with something very basic, and then within the same movement pattern, make sure that the exercise selection becomes slightly more advanced with each training block, so that they get that movement competency, they get that quality of movement before they go on to train with barbells and to lift heavy. That's something that's very, very important. You build a solid foundation and then compound upon that. Now, hopefully, all of this practical advice and tips that I give you in this video is going to come in very handy when it comes to making your own training plan. I would definitely advise you to go to an actual coach to get this stuff done and not try to do trial and error on your own, or at least do proper quality research, understand what you're doing, and then make your own training plan if you're doing so. Hopefully, this video was of some help. I would recommend that you check out this video on this playlist so that you can get a much better idea on how to do things the right way. And if you enjoy this video, make sure you hit the thumbs up button, comment down below what are the content you want me to cover in the future, hit the subscribe button and bell icon. It helps me out immensely. Share this video with all your friends who are into weight training. And until next time, take care, stay hungry.